In this video, we'll talk about all of DC's many different lantern rings, including several rather obscure ones you might not know about. We'll first start with the 7 colors of the rainbow that form a powerful energy force known as the emotional electromagnetic spectrum. The most well-known among them is the Green Lantern Corps, representing the power of will. The group was founded by the Guardians of the Universe as an intergalactic police force, with each member being responsible for a certain sector of the universe. Their headquarters is the planet Oa, which houses the central power battery, and within it resides Ion, a sentient entity of pure green energy and the embodiment of willpower itself. Many humans from Earth have been recruited into the Green Lantern Corps, the most well-known one being Hal Jordan. There have also actually been many different types of green power rings and different versions of the group, as well as different subdivisions within the Corps itself. But more on that later. Generally speaking, with a power ring, a Green Lantern can create energy constructs, fly, generate force fields, and manipulate energy, limited only by imagination and strength of will. Next, we'll talk about the Yellow Lanterns, otherwise formally known as the Sinestro Corps, representing the power of fear. Named after its founder, the traitorous Sinestro, a former Green Lantern who was banished to the planet Quard in the antimatter universe. There, he used the powers of Parallax, the sentient entity of fear, to create yellow lantern rings. Despite being usually portrayed as villains, the Sinestro Corps actually see themselves as peacekeepers, but unlike their rivals in green, believe that the use of intimidation, cruelty, and destruction are all necessary to maintain order in a chaotic universe. Next, we have the Red Lanterns, who represent the power of rage. This savage Lantern Corps was founded by Atrocitus, one of the few survivors of a massacre that wiped out his family and civilization. Fueled by fury, he forged the first red power battery on the planet Ismol, using blood magic. The entity for this power is Butcher, the embodiment of rage. Unlike other lantern teams, members of the Red Lantern Corps typically don't create solid, carefully shaped energy constructs, as the chaotic red light of rage is extremely difficult to control. Instead, they opt to produce destructive, shapeless blasts that are fiery or blood-like in nature. Next, Orange Lantern, with the power of avarice or greed. Instead of an entire Lantern Corps, there's only one single Agent Orange, known as Larfleeze, a greedy thief who refuses to share his powers with others. He lives in isolation on the planet Okara, deep within the planet's caverns, surrounded by his prized orange rings and power battery. The entity for this power is Ophidian, the embodiment of avarice. Despite not having a team, Larfleeze makes up for it by unleashing an army constructed from orange light energy, composed of the identities of individuals he's killed. We now move on to the Blue Lantern Corps, representatives of the power of hope. This group was founded by 2 exiled guardians of the universe, Ganthet and Said, who went on to create their own power lantern on Odim, a planet of lush beauty and unrestrained life. And Saint Walker was chosen as their first ring bearer. Blue lanterns are fundamentally pacifist and defensive. Alone, their hard light energy constructs are relatively weak. Instead, their main ability is to boost the powers of other colored lanterns, supercharging their rings beyond maximum power. And they could do other stuff like healing and emotional cleansing. Next on our list is the Indigo tribe, representatives of the power of compassion. Their elder, Natromo, keeper of the indigo light, first discovered these powers on the planet Nock, and gave the first indigo ring that he forged to a remorseful criminal named Iroke, who now acts as the tribe's leader. Each member carries a staff that acts as a portable power battery. And since they function as a tribal group instead of a service corps, wear tattoos instead of uniforms. The energy constructs that they create tend to take a more spiritual or natural form. And thanks to their capacity for compassion and empathy towards others, they can emulate the other energies of the emotional spectrum when they are in close proximity to lanterns of other colors. The seventh color, violet, is represented by the star sapphire core, whom visually appear to be pink. Fueled by the power of love, this predominantly female group was founded by the Zamarons, female equivalents of the guardians of the universe, with the rings and its central power battery being forged from mystical star sapphire gemstones on the planet Zamaron. Their key member is Carol Ferris, whom the Zamarons, in their twisted and distorted interpretation of love, tried to exploit her by making her the host of the Predator, a powerful and dangerous embodiment of the violet light of love. Apart from creating pretty-looking light constructs, star sapphire rings have the unique power to crystallize others with the power of love and manipulate the feelings of affection in others to a certain degree. The seven colors of the spectrum combined forms the white light of life, as how it originally was eons ago. Its opposite is black, representing death, darkness, and the total absence of emotion. We'll proceed with the Black Lantern Core first, essentially the zombie core, as it is made of slain and deceased beings who fell into the domain of the dead. It was founded by the entity known as Necron, the embodiment of death itself, with the appointment of William Hand as his herald. In Sector 666, on the planet Ryut, Necron created the Black Central Battery that powers Black Lantern rings, which function differently as they wield dark energy outside of the emotional light spectrum. They can create black energy constructs, but are seldom done. The rings can reanimate dead bodies, resurrecting dead heroes and villains as Necron's army, and infect the living in a stereotypical zombie fashion. They could also scan the emotional state of others and feed upon their victims' hearts once their emotional states have peaked. As the Black Lanterns sought to wipe out all life and emotion in the universe, the White Lantern Core, representing life itself, stood as the unifying power to combat that threat. The power was claimed by Hal Jordan, followed by many other well-established DC characters. This was only a temporary thing for all of them, however, as the only long-lasting White Lantern has been Kyle Rayner, master of all seven colors of the emotional spectrum. All of this was made possible due to the reawakening of the entity of life from deep within the Earth, revealing our planet to be the actual birthplace of all life in the DC universe. A user of a white ring can generate any power of the other lantern rings, including its own pure white energy, used to create energy constructs, heal injuries, and even restore life, as in permanently reviving the dead. And as it encounters Black Lantern energy, it purifies and erases it. Kyle Rayner has since, in his own words, been suppressing his White Lantern abilities by keeping his emotions in check, as the massive power output is deemed too dangerous. It basically functions as his Super Saiyan form, only powering up when needed, and reverting back to being a regular Green Lantern afterwards. His latest White Lantern transformation was used in the recent Starbreaker Supremacy storyline, in which he also made contact with the 7 emotional entities from beyond the Source Wall, followed by his fellow Lanterns using them as mounts as they charged into battle. The event concluded with the restoration of the central power batteries of all spectrums that had been previously destroyed in the last arc, thus fixing the instability of the universe's emotional spectrum that had been occurring for quite some time. There are still several other lantern cores and rings apart from these 9. As a result of the universe's emotional spectrum being fractured, as we mentioned just now, an unstable gray lantern power had emerged. And beyond the 7 visible colors of the spectrum is ultraviolet, as part of the invisible spectrum. Theoretically, there should also be another power representing the invisible spectrum at the other end, which is infrared. However, as of now, DC has not introduced such lantern powers yet. Instead, we'll be talking about the Gold Lantern Corps, whose origins are still being explored in the comics, and we still don't know where exactly do they fit on the spectrum. And there's also the Phantom Lantern, with powers that cycle between all 7 colors, going back and forth along the emotional electromagnetic spectrum. Just know that we won't be explaining this in chronological order of their appearances, just however we feel like instead. Starting with the Gray Lantern, represented by a single individual known as the Sorrow, with powers coming from his extreme grief and sadness. His identity is Nathan Broom, who, after being left behind at the altar by Carol Ferris, had his engagement ring infused with sadness energy, transforming itself into a gray power ring. All made possible due to the universe's fractured emotional spectrum at that time. The Sorrow is able to induce a feeling of sadness onto others and create powerful energy constructs from gray smoke that emanates continuously from his body. Another recent Gray Lantern is Lucia Cavalera, an original character from DC Universe Online. Next is the Ultraviolet Corps, representing the unseen light from the invisible spectrum, powered by repressed and hidden negative emotions such as self-hatred and shame. Among its members were well-known lanterns Sinestro and John Stewart, with the former using his old classic suit's design as the template for the Ultraviolet Corps' uniform. And instead of physical rings, this corps brands its members with power ring tattoos on their fingers. The heart of the corps is a sentient black sun from the Phantom Galaxy, known as Umbrax. The Ultraviolet Corps is formed through infection. As a being succumbs itself to their negative emotions, Umbrax's invisible light bonds to them, forcibly recruiting them. This makes the Ultraviolet Corps more like a network of enslaved minds. Next is the Gold Lantern, who resides in a distant future timeline in the 31st century. It appears that at some point, all the Lantern Corps had ceased to exist, and the Guardians of the Universe had evolved into beings of pure energy known as the Elders of Oa. They established the Gold Lantern Corps with the appointment of Kala Lor, a blind schoolteacher, as its first member. Referred to as the Light of Eternal Justice, it is unclear at the moment where exactly these powers lie within the established emotional spectrum, or if it's a collective evolution of all the colors combined, or if it's totally unrelated, existing outside of the spectrum completely. As a member of the Legion of Superheroes, Kala Lor also wears the Legion Flight Ring, which is sort of redundant, as his gold power ring already does what the Flight Ring can, plus more. Apart from the traditional powers of a lantern ring, the golden one seems to also be able to perform molecular transmutation, physically imprison enemies within its light, and resist the great darkness brought upon the heroes by Vandal Savage. These powers do not seem to be connected at all to Zundernell, the self-proclaimed Golden Lantern and custodian of the Cosmic Grail, who resides in the destroyed universe of Earth-15. The Absolute Universe also seems to now have John Stewart as a Golden Lantern of sorts, but more on that later. Next is the Phantom Lantern with the power of all 7 emotions of the electromagnetic spectrum. The Phantom Ring was created billions of years ago by a renegade guardian named Rami, an action which caused him to be excommunicated. In the modern day, the ring found a new bearer, Frank Leminski, a man obsessed about becoming a Green Lantern. The ring gave him more than that, with the ability to change between 7 emotional spectrum powers whenever he felt the slightest emotion. This instability proved to be dangerous, as the constant emotional flux would cause a weak user like Leminski to self-destruct. But did you know that the Phantom Ring is actually just a mere imitation of the first-ever power ring created by the Guardians 10 billion years ago for VOLTHOOM, aka the first lantern of the multiverse? Okay, so when we speak of VOLTHOOM, two different rings come to mind. VOLTHOOM's original ring, with prismatic powers quite similar to the Phantom Ring, and the other one, the green-colored ring of VOLTHOOM, aka Power Ring, often considered as Earth-3's twisted counterpart of a Green Lantern ring. Let's talk about them now. VOLTHOOM was a scientist from a future timeline of Earth-15. He and his mother discovered the emotional electromagnetic spectrum and harnessed those powers to create the Travel Lantern, a device capable of traveling across time, space, and different universes. Escaping the destruction of his world, VOLTHOOM journeyed across the multiverse before settling in the prime DC universe 10 billion years in the past. There, he worked with the Guardians of the Universe as they sought to learn about the secrets of the spectrum from him. By pouring all of their emotions into a new battery they created called the Great Heart, a power ring emerged. VOLTHOOM slipped this ring on and became the first-ever lantern and peacekeeper of the universe. And that new Great Heart power battery? It was embedded into VOLTHOOM's chest to give him direct access to the spectrum. He had complete control over the 7 emotional colors, able to tap into all of them simultaneously. But eventually, he went insane, and the Guardians had to defeat him by creating the first-ever team of Green Lanterns. Having learnt their lesson, the Guardians opted to focus on only one single color of the spectrum that represented willpower. So that was basically the true origins of the Green Lantern Corps. And what about the other ring of VOLTHOOM? During VOLTHOOM's multiversal travels earlier, he had landed on Earth-3. There, he encountered a wizard named Mordru, who took a piece of his soul and infused it into a ring he created, thus creating Earth-3's ring of VOLTHOOM. The one to bear this power is known as Power Ring, most notably the cowardly Harold Jordan. This is a universe where good and evil are reversed. And here, instead of willpower, the ring feeds off its users' fears and anxiety, whilst providing abilities similar to a typical Green Lantern ring. There's also an entire core built around the rings, which had been mass-produced. Known as the Emerald Knights of Earth-3, this ruthless interplanetary force works in service of the overlords of Oa, rulers of the universe. And it's not just Earth-3 that's unique. If we dive deeper into the multiverse, we'll find countless other weird variations of Green Lantern powers. Sometimes it doesn't even involve rings, as their powers may include the use of different paraphernalia of all kinds, as well as different sources and origins for their powers. If we go back to DC's Golden Age, we'll find a different variation of the Green and Red Lanterns, who were not powered by the emotional light spectrum, nor were they affiliated with any Lantern Corps. There's Alan Scott, DC's original Green Lantern, who is powered by the mystical flames of the Starheart, and his Russian counterpart, Vladimir Sokov, a Soviet agent chosen as the wielder of the Crimson Flame. Both their powers are part of an ancient wild magic that would later be passed on to their daughters, who could wield the flames naturally even without power rings. The Starheart's powers are rather flame-based, and even the physical constructs that they create tend to have a fiery appearance. Ever heard about the Omega Lanterns? It's actually an informal title, used to refer to 3 individuals at certain points. First is Kyle Rayner. As a White Lantern, he was appointed as a diplomat to the planet Vega. Caught in the middle of a civil war, Kyle struggled with the gray morality of having to choose sides, causing his appearance to change as it reflected his emotional complexity. Second is Jessica Cruz. After being seemingly killed by Darkseid's Omega beams, she absorbed his powers and was resurrected, with a new ability to channel Omega energy and shoot Omega beams from her hands. Third is Roy Harper. After the death of this former Archer sidekick of Green Arrow, he was revived by a Black Lantern ring, but at the same time, mind-controlled by Darkseid, making him the Omega Lantern. There have been many Green Lantern crossovers with other franchises, with some of them introducing us to unique and original power rings, being used by the main characters of those other IPs. In the Planet of the Apes crossover, there's the Universal Ring, an unstable yet powerful prismatic ring that cycles between all 7 powers of the emotional spectrum, just like the Phantom Ring. And by tapping into the entire spectrum at once, the user could unlock this white mode. In the Star Trek crossover, Scotty attempted to replicate the Lantern power rings with partial success, resulting in the creation of these Starfleet power rings that enables their users to create a personal force field and fire phaser blasts from their hands. And in the KFC crossover, Hal Jordan created a physical light construct of another Green Lantern ring to share his powers with Colonel Sanders. The Colonel then proceeded to shape the ring according to his own weird tastes. Let's talk about hybrid lanterns, which happens whenever an individual wears different colored rings at the same time, resulting in some unique and interesting forms. One of the first ones was Hal Jordan, as a green and blue lantern hybrid, carrying 2 rings. There's also Razor, who became a red and blue lantern hybrid in the Young Justice animated series. Harley Quinn was a unique case, as she wore only 1 ring that was a fusion between a red and black ring. Guy Gardner became what Jon Stewart jokingly called the Christmas Lantern, when he became a red and green lantern hybrid. There's a Sinestro variant from the Dark Multiverse who became a black and white hybrid known as the Limbo Lantern, as he is trapped between a state of life and death. In a fight against Parallax, Hal Jordan wielded both a yellow and orange ring, while Guy Gardner had the harder task of wielding the 2 most extreme rings, Star Sapphire and Red. But the ultimate hybrid lantern has to be Kyle Rayner. Before he became a White Lantern and master of 7 emotions, he transformed into this unstable hybrid mode after power rings of all 7 colors attached themselves onto his fingers. There was also a time afterwards when Kyle, as a White Lantern, had 6 entities of the emotional spectrum enter his body, turning him into this form. And when the universe's emotional spectrum was fractured, it deeply affected an all-attuned guy like Kyle, turning him into a melted rainbow popsicle. Here are some other rings used by Lantern villains we haven't talked about: the DARKSTAR ring, Source Lantern ring, STARBREAKER ring, Great Darkness ring, and Starband. The DARKSTAR ring's malevolent powers come from the Revenant Queen Anya and the evil god Olgrun. Its powers include necromancy and reviving the dead as twisted energy constructs. It even revived its user Tharos from the dead, evolving him into a more powerful, transformed state. Here's another ring connected to Tharos, corrupt Lord Premier of the United Planets. The organization had their own power battery known as the Source Lantern, and Tharos had his scientists work on a ring to channel its powers. However, Tharos's nephew Varan stole the ring in order to take those powers for himself. The Starbreaker core is made of a group of space vampires known as Sun Eaters. Their leader, Luciphage, constructed his own central power battery that could strip the universe off all emotions, siphoning its energy to empower himself and his clan. These rings that they constructed allowed them to channel that stolen energy. Vandal Savage attempted to mess with time and erase the Age of Heroes using a power known as the Great Darkness. Towards the end, it was revealed that he had been using a power ring as the source of this great darkness, culminating in a final clash between him and Gold Lantern. The Starband is a device that was invented and used by Evil Star. It's a wristband that functions almost the same as a lantern ring. The villain even has a group of miniature versions of himself called Starlings, each with their own starband. And if we go back to 1982, pre-Crisis era, there was the Anti-Green Lantern Corps from the planet Quard in the Antimatter universe. The Weaponers of Quard, known for having created the first Yellow Lantern ring for Sinestro, developed these powerful antimatter rings capable of destroying any positive matter being with a single hit. However, the group was short-lived after the Green Lanterns destroyed their central power battery. The Anti-Green Lantern Corps was the first ever alternate Lantern Corps other than green to be introduced by DC, and it wouldn't be until 2006 when we get the Yellow Lantern Corps, despite Sinestro's yellow power ring having already appeared since the 1960s. And prior to the era of multiple lantern teams based on different colors of the spectrum, there were other early Green Lantern rival groups, such as the DARKSTARS and the MANHUNTERS. The DARKSTARS were created by the Controllers, a group of Malthusians from the same species as the Guardians of the Universe. Similar to the Green Lanterns, they're a peacekeeping force, but instead of rings, members of this rival team use power suits called DARKSTAR exomantles. Even Jon Stewart once became a member, and lately alluded to that fact during the events of the similarly named DARKSTAR ring, which he also became an owner of. The Manhunters, on the other hand, were the Guardians of the Universe's first-ever attempt at creating an intergalactic police force composed of mindless robot sentinels, but the program became corrupted, causing the machines to commit a massacre. This is what led the Guardians to take a different approach for their second attempt, using sentient beings full of emotion and willpower instead. Thus, the Green Lantern Corps was born. And there's actually a third army created by the Guardians after the Manhunters and Green Lanterns, called the Third Army. After the many problems caused by rogue lanterns and the rise of other corps, the Guardians stupidly concluded that free will is the source of all chaos. So they basically did a U-turn and created another mindless army, this time organic, made from their own flesh. What about direct duplicates or clones of Green Lantern? Similar to Superman, Hal Jordan has also been exposed to a duplicator ray that created a bizarro doppelganger of him. And over the years, other bizarro lanterns have appeared across the DC multiverse as duplicates of Guy Gardner, Sinestro, and Jon Stewart, just to name a few examples. Other examples of clone lanterns include Oblivion, created after Kyle Rayner broke through the source wall and edited the source itself. And there's also Mean Lantern, a name given by Hal Jordan to a negative copy of himself created by Eclipso. And further back in the 1960s, there were two instances of evil scientists creating pseudo-lantern rings in their attempts to imitate Green Lantern's powers. Did you know that in the 30th century, there's a hero named Rainbow Girl who can harness the powers of the entire emotional spectrum without a power ring? However, this also results in uncontrollable mood swings. Her powers are not to be confused with Color Kid, who is also from the same reject team known as the Legion of Substitute Heroes. His abilities are to alter the colors of any living being or object, which seems lame, but might be super useful in a fight against lanterns. On an unrelated note, the 30th century's Legion of Superheroes present their members with Legion flight rings, capable of flight and space travel, probably inspired by lantern power rings. Another unrelated hero ring is the Flash ring, which does nothing but keep the Flash's costume inside of it. In a future video, we'd like to talk more in depth about the Green Lantern Corps specifically, such as unique forms achieved by individuals, unique green power rings and paraphernalia, and the different subdivisions within the Green Lantern Corps itself, and unaffiliated teams, or breakaway teams, that claim the name for themselves. If you like this video, please check out this one we made about every single Green Lantern from Earth. Thanks for watching.